Will please come to order. At this time, I will ask all unauthorized persons to exit the chamber. I'd like to recognize the senator from the 53rd.
Mr. President, it's good to see you this morning. Thank you for your leadership, and the men and women here at the state capitol and the Senate are ready to go to battle for their people. Not much in history today, except this is Read Across America Day, and the senator from the 7th said that he prefers the book to have pictures in it. The journal's been read and found to be correct, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Is there any objection to dispensing with the reading of the journal? Hearing none, the reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to the confirmation of the journal? The chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. All senators who have bills or resolutions to introduce, please bring them to the Secretary's desk. First reading of Senate bills and resolutions.
Senate Bill 462 by Senator Kennedy of the 18th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Title VII of the OCGA relating to banking and finance, so as to transfer duties, powers, responsibilities, and other authority relative to industrial loans from the Industrial Loan Commissioner to the Department of Banking and Finance, to change the name of such loans to installment loans, to revise their short title, to provide for definitions, to provide for procedures, conditions, and limitations relative to issuing installment loans, to provide for exceptions, to provide for powers and duties relative to the department, to amend the OCGA so as to confirm cross-references, to provide for a purpose, to provide for related matters, to provide for applicability, to repeal convicting laws, and for other purposes.
Banking and finance.
Senate Bill 463 by Senator Kennedy of the 18th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 21 of the OCGA relating to primaries elections generally, so as to remove provisions and references regarding direct recording electric voting machines, to revise certain duties of the state election board, to provide for the deadline for registering to vote in certain runoffs, to provide for the number of voting booths or enclosures, to provide for the division of certain precincts under certain circumstances. Senate Bill 464 by Senator Kennedy of the 18th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Title IX of the OCGA relating to civil practice, so as to provide for uniform laws governing mediation and participants in mediation, provide for definitions.
Judiciary.
Senate Bill 465 by Senator Harrell of the 40th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 20 of the OCGA relating to elementary and secondary education, so as to require the State Board of Education to establish facility requirements for temporary classrooms, provide for plans and for converting to temporary
Education and youth.
Senate Bill 466 by Senator Martin of the 9th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Part 6 of Article 6 of Chapter 2 of Title 20 of the OCGA relating to employment under the Quality Basic Education Act, so as to remove the needs improvement rating from the group of performance evaluation ratings, which may adversely impact an educator.
Education and youth.
Senate Bill 467 by Senator Beach of the 21st. A bill to be titled an act to amend Article 3 of Chapter 27 of Title 50 of the OCGA relating to bona fide cone-operated amusement machines.
Regulated industries.
Senate Bill 468 by Senator Unterman of the 45th. A bill to be titled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 8 of Title 4 of the OCGA relating to general provisions regarding dogs, so as to require animal shelters to accept
Agriculture and Consumer Affairs.
Senate Bill 469 by Senator Jones of the 10th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend an act to incorporate the city of Stonecrest into DeKalb County.
State and local government.
Senate Bill 470 by Senator Jones of the 10th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend an act to create and establish in DeKalb County, Georgia, districts in which the members of County Board of Education.
State and local government.
Senate Bill 471 by Senator Jones of the 10th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend an act to create and establish in DeKalb County, Georgia, districts from which the members of the County Board of Education of DeKalb County shall be elected, approved from April 12th,
State and local government.
Senate Resolution 854 by Senator Cowser of the 46th and others. A resolution applying for the Convention of Estates under Article 5 of the United States Constitution and for other purposes.
Rules.
That completes order, Mr. President.
First reading and reference of House bills and resolutions.
House Bill 463 by Representative Momtahan of the 17th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Title 40 of the OCGA relating to motor vehicles and traffic, so as to provide for the issuance of a Class C driver's license to operators of certain three-wheeled
Public safety.
House Bill 555 by Representative Carpenter the 4th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Article 3 of Chapter 4 of Title 17.
Judiciary.
House Bill 752 by Representative Belton of the 112th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 33 of Title 43 of the OCGA relating to general provisions regarding
Interstate cooperation.
House Bill 842 by Representative Williams, the 145th, and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Chapter 1 of Title 31 of the OCGA relating to general provisions regarding health, so as to prohibit providers from discriminating against potential organ transplant
A
recipients.
very important bill, Health and Human Services.
House Bill 985 by Representative Irwin of the 28th. A bill to be titled an act to amend an act to provide for a new charter for the city of Homer, approved May 17th, 2004. House Bill 987 by Representative Cooper of the 43rd and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Title 31 of the OCGA relating to health so as to provide additional measures for the protection of elderly persons.
Regulated industries.
House Bill 990 by Representative Meeks of the 178th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend an act to provide for the new charter for the City of Screven approved March 9th, 1959.
State and local government.
House Bill 1000 by Representative Benson of the 31st and others. A bill to be titled an act to authorize the governing authority of the town of Brailston to levy an excise tax pursuant to subsection
State
B.
and local government.
House Bill 1005 by Representative Dickey of the 140th and others. A bill to be titled an act to authorize the governing authority of the city of Forsyth to levy an excise tax.
State and local government.
House Bill 1016 by Representative Burchett of the 176th. A bill to be titled an act to amend an act reconstituting the Board of Education of Atkinson County approved.
State and local government.
House Bill 1019 by Representative Bazemore of the 63rd and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend an act to incorporate the city of South Fulton and Fulton County, Georgia approved.
State and
April.
local government.
That completes order, Mr. President.
Thank you, young lady. I apologize for the interruptions. Secretary will read reports of standing committees.
Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Appropriation has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 792, due passed by committee substitute, respectfully submitted by Senator Hill of the 4th District, Chair. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Finance has had under consideration the following legislation and instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 396, due passed by substitute, respectfully submitted by Senator Huffstetler of the 52nd District, Chair. That completes order, Mr. President.
Secretary will read bills and resolutions for the second time.
Senate Bill 35 by Senator Jackson of the 2nd and others. Sex offenders residing near their victims and such victims' immediate family members prohibit. Senate Bill 40 by Senator Jackson of the 2nd and others. Sexual assault by persons with supervisory or disciplinary authority. Sexual contact between an employee and student enrolled at such school prohibit. Senate Bill 287 by Senator Jones of the 22nd and others. Limitations of prosecution, statute of limitations on the offenses of rape, revise. Senate Bill 312 by Senator Jackson of the 2nd and others. Georgia Commission on African American History and Culture, create. Senate Bill 318 by Senator Ligon of the 3rd and others. Education, public forums at public institutions of higher education, provide. Senate Bill 327 by Senator Karen Shack of the 48th and others. Labor and industrial relations, employers to provide reasonable break time to employees to express breast milk for nursing child, required. Senate Bill 357 by Senator Heath of the 31st and others. Firearms, carry weapons in place of worship and in schools operated by such places of worship, revise the ability. Senate Bill 385 by Senator Wilkinson of the 50th. Prevention and control of air pollution, burning of certain chemically treated wood products for purposes of commercial energy generation, prohibit. Senate Bill 408 by Senator Strickland of the 17th and others. Sick leave for the immediate family members, sunset provision relating to such sick leave requirements, repeal. House Bill 337 by Representative Blackman of the 146 and others. Georgia Peer-to-Peer Card Sharing Program, enact. That completes order, Mr. President.
Thank you. It's now time for the morning roll call. Are there any motions to excuse? Senator from the 2nd.
Mr. President, I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 10th for business outside the chamber.
Without objection, the senator is excused. Senator from the 48th. 48th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senators from the 5th and 39th for business inside the Capitol.
Senator from the 28th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse both senators the 9th and the 27th for business outside the Capitol.
9th and the 27th are excused without objection. Senator from the 8th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 11th for business in the Capitol.
Senator is excused. Senator from the 33rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senators from the 35th and 38th District for business inside the Capitol.
Without objection, the senators from the 35th and 38th are excused. It is now time for the morning roll call. Any other motions to excuse? The Secretary will call roll of the senators. Signify your presence by voting the yes switch. The Secretary will unlock the machines. I wondered if there was any Democratic congressman downstairs that needed to be introduced today. And I saw it on the slide.
Yeah, David came in, but he left.
He left.
And
Okay.
I think they all have to be at DC.
Okay.
So I think they hidden it.
Okay. Okay. All right. Good. Okay. I didn't see. I would have asked Nakima, but I didn't see her. But okay.
But listen, I cleaned up that ticket you got.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, it is now time for the morning devotion. If all senators would please take your seat and cease all audible conversation, I'd like to ask the doorkeepers to secure the chamber at this time. I recognize the senator from the 55th to lead the pledge and to introduce the chaplain of the day.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will you all say the pledge with me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now the Georgia flag. Pledge allegiance to the Georgia flag, which is Good morning to everyone. Just brace yourself for a treat. Dr. Curran B. Lee is my pastor. He is the senior pastor and founder of Berean Christian Church in Stone Mountain. Under his leadership, Berean Christian Church has become the place to be on Tuesday, 12 o'clock Bible study and 7 o'clock. Saturday, for service. Sunday, we have 3 churches that he attends and takes care of. So you can be in DeKalb County, Henry County, or Gwinnett County. This house of worship has also fostered the spiritual growth for over 10,000 members at those 3 different locations. Dr. Lee is the author of several books and is the founder of various programs, including a nonprofit ministry named A Word for the Times, Inc., which is dedicated to providing exhortation and instruction for the body of Christ through biblical and practical healing. While some call him pastor, I call him my friend, and others just Dr. Lee. And the beautiful Mrs. Yolanda Thomas Lee calls him her husband and her life partner. They are the proud parents of 2 sons, Curran Jr., Curran II, and Kernard. With his charismatic personality, his innovative ideas, and finally his love for Christ and all people has made Dr. Curran Lee a spiritual advisor and friends to so many. He's a man of the people. Thank you for being a change agent in every space that you occupy. It is an honor to know you, Dr. Curran B. Lee.
Thank you so much, Senator Butler, and good morning to all of you, and what a real joy it is to be here and to stand before so many distinguished people, and thank you so much for all the things that you do in the State House to represent the citizens of Georgia. I count it a real joy to be here with you on today. Not long ago, I was reading about 5 boys who lived in low-income housing, and they aspired to one day better their situation. They started a lawn care service, and they would go around from place to place trimming and maintaining other people's lawn. And one day, they met a multi-millionaire. And this millionaire was so impressed with these 5 boys that he invited them to his home for a July 4th party. These 5 boys were blown away at the home of this millionaire. And they just walked around and they just kept saying to themselves, one day we would like to live just like this. As they're walking around, viewing everything, the owner of the home, the multimillionaire, came out and saw them just so caught up with all that they saw. And he said to them, how many of you would like to live like this? How many of you would like to have a home like this? And all 5 of them raised their hand and said, we would, we would. He says, I tell you what, I'm going to make you a millionaire on today. Would you be interested in becoming a millionaire today? And they all said, we would, we would. He said, okay, all you have to do is to jump into the Olympic pool that's right in front of you and swim from one side to the other side. And when you come out, I'll make you an instant millionaire. Would you be willing to do it? And all 5 of them raised their hands. And he said to them, one stipulation, there are sharks in the pool. And you have to jump in the pool with the sharks, swim from one end to the other end. And if you make it out safely, I'll make you a millionaire. And before you knew it, one boy was in the pool. And one boy was swimming and swimming and swimming. And he made it from the start of the pool all the way to the end of the pool and climbed out, and sharks did not bother him. When he got out of the pool, the millionaire was blown away. And he said to the boy, I guess you would like your $1 million now. And the boy said back to the homeowner, all I want to know is who pushed me. He said, it wasn't my intention to jump in this pool. That was not my desire. That was not my aspiration. But when somebody pushed me, I had to do the best I could to get out of this pool. And I want to say to you in the office that you hold, that sometimes it feels like somebody has pushed you. Sometimes it feels like you are in over your head. But like that little boy, you've got to make up your mind. Since you are where you are, you must do the very best you can for the citizens of Georgia. And I leave with you the words of one of the greatest leaders of all time, Jesus the Christ. In John chapter 9, verse 4, Jesus said these words, I must work the works of him that sent me while it is day, because the night is coming when no person can work. I must work the works of him that sent me while it is day, because the night is coming when no person can work. And I say to you today that you take those words in John chapter 9, verse 4, and as you serve the citizens of Georgia, that you serve individually, that you serve daily, and that you serve knowingly. Because Jesus says one day, the day is coming when no one will be able to work. Thank you for this time. You're out in that pool, and whether somebody push you or not, you got to do the best you can to help the citizens of Georgia to survive. Shall we pray? God, thank you so much for this day. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for these men and women who serve the great state of Georgia. And I pray that you would help them with their decision making, and that they would make decisions that would increase the quality of life for those in whom they serve. Thank you for this day. Thank you for your guidance. Thank you for your presence. We appreciate you, and we appreciate one another. This is our prayer in the name of our Lord. And they all said together, amen.
Senators, we're going to break with tradition. If you'll keep your seat for just a moment, we have a special presentation for this pastor. I'm going to call upon the senator from the 55th to conduct that at this time. Read the resolution, please.
Senate Resolution 768 by Senator Butler of the 55th. Resolution recognizing and commending Dr. Kerwin B. Lee and for other purposes. Whereas Dr. Kerwin B. Lee is the senior pastor and founder of Berean Christian Church in Stone Mountain, Georgia. And whereas Berean Christian Church began in 1996 with 200 individuals and has grown to over 10,000 members. And whereas in 2006, he established a second church location in Snellville, Georgia. A third campus was launched in Stockbridge, Georgia during the latter part of 2015. All three locations have experienced phenomenal growth since their inception. And whereas Dr. Lee's charismatic personality, contagious humor, and attitude have attracted people from all walks of life. And whereas it's abundantly fitting and proper that this enduring example of God's message of peace and love be recognized and congratulated for his innumerable good works rendered on behalf of persons in need. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body recognize and commend Dr. Kerwin B. Lee and extend best wishes for many more years of successful fellowship and leadership. That completes the order, Mr. President.
I get to switch on the mic. So, Dr. Lee had a birthday last month, and I wasn't able to be there with him and to make a big deal and have a big party with him, because they did have a party. But I wanted to present this resolution to him this morning. That was one of the bargaining chips for getting him here. Although he didn't know about it, it is quite a surprise, I'm sure. But Dr. Lee, I thank you so much for your service. I thank you for your friendship, and happy birthday.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, at this time, I would like to ask the doorkeepers to close those doors. I'd like to ask the doorkeepers to close those doors. And if we could keep our conversation to a minimum, we have another very special guest here today, and I'd like to call upon the senator from the 20th to make that introduction.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have the very distinct honor today to introduce our senior U.S. Senator David Perdue. We are so delighted to have him join us here in the Senate today. He is a native of Houston County. His father and my grandfather were good friends, worked together on the school board in Houston County during the integration. He has been a champion for Georgians. He has just a few things he's accomplished. He's helped us get funding to deepen the Port of Savannah, which is going to be fully funded and completed soon. He's been a champion for agriculture in Georgia, and we just announced the block grant for Hurricane Michael relief last week. He worked tirelessly on that. He's been a champion for our military installations, and that's of particular importance to me, having Robins Air Force Base in my district. He was a former CEO of Reebok and Dollar General, and he's taken that business expertise to Washington. He's been an outstanding senator for us. I don't know if most of you probably were at the Georgia Chamber Eggs and Issues breakfast, but he gave the best speech by a politician that I have ever heard. He is my friend. He and Bonnie are wonderful people, and we are so fortunate to have them working for us in Washington. U.S. Senator David Perdue.
Thank you, Senator. He tells that story all the time. He talks about my father and his grandfather. He's really bragging about how much younger he is. So, Larry, thank you. I mean, I'm serious. Their family has been great in our part of the world, and he's got a great heritage. He's living up to it. Mr. President, thank you for having me today. Ladies and gentlemen, I am so proud to be here this morning. I want to thank you for what you do for the state of Georgia. You're citizen legislators. I brag on it all the time in Washington. You know I do. I come here and say that all the time. You work here 40-plus days a year. Of course, you take the rest of the year off, I know. But no, you're citizen-led. You go back and have real day jobs. You take care of your family and the people back home and your constituents. And you live under the laws you pass. The thing I'm most proud of is you don't go home until you get the budget funded. You don't get the state funded. Imagine that in the federal government if we could do that, which we've only done 4 times in the last 45 years. We could learn a lot from you guys in Washington, trust me. And I want to thank you for your partnership. We talk about what the federal government's done for the harbor deepening at Savannah and for disaster relief, but the first dollars, even under Governor Perdue's time here, under Governor Perdue, Governor Deal, and now Governor Kemp, you guys have been funding that port for the last 15 years. And after 20 years, we now have a path to completion because President Trump stood up and said, yes, that's an infrastructure project we got to have. And then disaster relief, the first dollars that went to our farmers, as you well know, you appropriated it right here, were emergency dollars from this body. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate your partnership, Mr. President. It's an honor to be here. I'll turn it back over to you. God bless you guys. Thank you for what you do for our state. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, for giving Senator Perdue a warm welcome. At this time, we have another very special guest here, and I'd like to call upon the senator from the 25th to make that introduction. Come on, guys.
Hold on, we're taking a picture right there. Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you, Mr. President. I got both presiding officers up here at the same time here. So thank you very much. It is an honor to be here today along with the senator from the 14th and the 37th, 32nd, 21st, and the 6th to celebrate and recognize the Atlanta Braves and their and all their top brass from the organization. And it's not hard to see why we're able to celebrate another divisional title that the Atlanta Braves had this year. It was the 18th divisional title, which ties a major league record for the most in history. And we have with us today the CEO, Derek Schiller, CEO of Development, Mike Plant, the Executive Chief Legal Officer, Greg Heller, and a person who I was a big fan of back in the day. I was a fan of him because he was a hard-hitting safety for the Atlanta Falcons, but Brian Jordan. But he had a distinguished career with the Atlanta Braves as well. And I'm going to yield my time to the President and CEO, Derek Schiller. But let's give them a warm welcome for everything they do here.
You have a resolution?
Hey, on behalf of these guys behind me, I just want to say thank you very much for having us. Obviously, 2019 was a great year in many ways for the Atlanta Braves, but we didn't reach our end goal. And so one of the other things that we're here to tell you is that we're still after that elusive goal, which is winning the World Series. All the people behind me and everybody that's down there in Northport, Florida, working their tails off, trying to make this team better. We're looking forward to seeing everybody on April 3rd, our home opener, and really appreciate everybody here supporting the Atlanta Braves, all that you do. So thank you very much for having us.
I couldn't dare let this baseball team be up here without giving a couple comments about baseball. And the Braves have had this uncomfortable relationship with me throughout my life. The first date I went on with my wife was at the game when Sid Bream got the hit. And Cabrera came around and scored the winning run. So that was kind of, we were kind of locked and loaded around baseball. But then I got drafted in 1996 by the Florida Marlins. And I didn't realize this was like a really competitive thing. I just thought, just because the Braves and the Marlins were in the same division. So the first week of mini camp, the strength coordinator comes down and he says, who's got the red Jeep? And I said, oh, that's me. I got the red Jeep. He goes, it's a $50 fine. You got an Atlanta Braves license plate on the front of your car. Get it off. So these guys have been great for us. It's an incredible brand that the world's watching. The Braves put on an unbelievable team. To watch them start to really catch their stride again, and the momentum they've got here in Georgia is awesome. So thanks for the jobs you create. Thank you for the families that you entertain. Thank you.
Thank you.
Doctor of the Day. I would like to call upon the senator from the 42nd to introduce our Doctor of the Day.
Mr. President, good morning, colleagues. It's my honor to introduce our Doctor of the Day this morning, Dr. Stephen Holbrook. He is an emergency physician. He practices emergency medicine in Decatur, Georgia, graduated from West Virginia University School of Medicine and has practiced for over 3 decades. He has worked at Grady and at DeKalb Medical Center. He's been the director of Hillendale Hospital, and now he is at the VA Claremont Hospital and at Georgia Tech Health Services. He has also been a resident of DeKalb County for over 32 years. Colleagues, please join me in welcoming and thanking Dr. Stephen Holbrook.
Thank you all. I appreciate being here. Being Doctor of the Day, I've done this a few years now. It's a honor for us to be able to serve you guys. In the emergency room, we kind of feel like we're in the Shark Tank, as you've already heard about this morning. Please remember the emergency physicians, first responders, fire EMS, and all the safety that we try to provide 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Have a good day. Thank you.
We have another special guest with us today. We'd like to call upon the Secretary of the Senate to read a resolution.
Senate Resolution 775 by Senator Butler of the 55th. A resolution commending Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated for its 107 years of service and recognizing March 2nd, 2020 as Delta Day at the state capitol and for other purposes. Whereas Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated is a public service organization founded on January 13th, 1913 by 22 visionary collegiate women at Howard University in Washington, D.C. And whereas Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated is a sisterhood of college-educated women dedicated to academic excellence and committed to community service. And whereas the sorority has more than 1,000 collegiate alumni chapters located in the United States, as well as internationally in Germany, England, Japan, the Virgin Islands, Bermuda, the Bahamas, and the Republic of Korea. And whereas members of this illustrious sisterhood serve as elected officials, lend support to various local communities, and lead dialogues on public policy throughout their communities. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body commend Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated for its continued commitment to public service and its work in making the state of Georgia a better place in which to live, and recognize March 2nd, 2020 as Delta Day at the state capitol. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Is there adoption to the resolution? The chair hears none. The resolution is adopted. I would like to call upon the senator from the 55th. This is Senator from the 55th day today, if you didn't know it, to speak to the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. I really do appreciate celebrating my day with the Delta Sigma Theta sorority, founded in 1913 on the campus of Howard University by 22 visionary college women. During its 103rd years of existence, Delta Sigma Theta has impacted communities and transformed lives of individuals across the world with its 5-point programmatic thrust. Number 1, economic development. Number 2, educational development. Number 3, international awareness and involvement. 4, physical and mental health. And number 5, political awareness and involvement is what they concentrate on. Delta Sigma Theta is a sisterhood of college-educated women dedicated to academic excellence and committed to providing assistance. Delta Sigma Theta, Inc. has instituted its annual Servant Leadership Award in recognition of former State Representative Georgiana Sinkfield for her service as the longest-serving female in the history of the Georgia General Assembly. Today we have with us Leslie Denise Walker, hold your hand up, Leslie, Deborah McLeod, Geraldine Smith, Tanya Bales, and Sheila Mason. Please welcome Delta Sigma Theta, and we have some of them in the gallery to your right, and I think some in the middle here. If you all would stand and let us recognize and appreciate you for all the service that you give to the young ladies of the state of Georgia.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Y'all get your phone. Mr. Secretary, if you read a resolution, please.
Senate Resolution 582 by Senator Orrock of the 36th. A resolution commending the Atlanta Jewish Film Festival and recognizing its 20th anniversary and for other purposes. Whereas the Atlanta Jewish Film Festival is the largest film festival in Atlanta and the state of Georgia, and is one of the largest Jewish film festivals in the world. And whereas AJFF cooperates with leaders from various religious, ethnic, cultural, and educational groups to create programming that deepens dialogue and bonds between communities. And whereas in 2015, the AJFF made history by becoming the largest Jewish film festival in the world, attracting more than 38,600 moviegoers. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body commend the Atlanta Jewish Film Festival for its many contributions to the arts in our community and for fostering stronger ties by educating communities that have religious, ethnic, and cultural differences, and recognize the grand occasion of its 20th anniversary. That completes the order, Mr. President.
I call upon the senator from the 36th to speak to the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I am truly just filled with joy to bring to you the commemoration resolution commemorating the 20th year anniversary of the Atlanta Jewish Film Festival. The Atlanta Jewish Film Festival began way back in 2000 with less than 2,000 folks attending that year. This year, 38,000 plus people have attended the Jewish Film Festival with screenings all over the metro Atlanta area. Today, this is the largest Jewish film festival in the world. The Jewish Film Festival opened this year with screening Shared Legacies, the African American Jewish Civil Rights Alliance, a film about how Jews and African Americans worked together in shaping the civil rights movement over the last 65 years. It was partially financed and filmed right here in Atlanta. The American Jewish Committee played a significant role in the founding and funding of some of the most important civil rights organizations, including the NAACP, Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. The Atlanta Jewish Film Festival maintains a world-class standard, sponsoring the latest and most esteemed innovators in the artistic field of film. These films present a balanced program that look at contemporary and political life in Israel as well as Jewish life in America. And in the subject matter and presentation, the many films reflect the diversity of interests and demographics of the Atlanta community. 48 full-length films have been gifted to our community this year, and more to come in years to come. The commitment of the committee to keeping this festival on the cutting edge of social awareness and civil justice is more than laudable. We're so grateful to the Jewish community as well for their continued support and advocacy for human rights. I'm just very delighted, and I hope you'll help me welcome the leadership of the Atlanta Jewish Film Festival is with us today. Your valuable art enriches all of our lives. Sari Earl, the Vice President of the board, will come forward. She's accompanied by Kenny Blank, who is the longtime executive director, Steve Leibovitz, who's chaired the board, for many years, and others who are with us. So please accept this resolution and join me in recognizing the 20th anniversary of the Atlanta Jewish Film Festival. Sari Earl, will you come forward?
Thank you so much. We have so much gratitude for you, for the work you do, and for the ability for us to be able to be within this community. What distinguishes the Atlanta Jewish Film Festival is that we are mission-driven. We're a nonprofit, and our mission is to elevate social and cultural understanding in our community. And when we say our community, we mean all of our community. Our board is diverse, our committees are diverse, our films are diverse, and our audience is diverse. We aim to elevate the conversation around civil rights, human rights, how we treat each other, tough issues, good issues, and we try to do it with everybody having a really good time. So again, we just want to thank you, express our appreciation. I'd also like to introduce the chairman of our board, Max Leventhal, as well as Brennan Decker. Thank you so much. We greatly appreciate it. And Senator Ark, thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Can I get a picture? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now we'll have a photograph right there with Lieutenant Governor. Lieutenant Governor will have his photograph for y'all.
Oh, great. Okay, wonderful.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Ms. Virginia Harris. She's played a pivotal role in education, local government, and philanthropic work in Georgia for many, many years. She's president of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women. She's being reelected for her second term. She has served on the board of directors for numerous organizations throughout the state, including past president of Albany State, vice president of Gwinnett Rockdale Newton, and many other organizations. She is active in Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, and she regularly attends the National Urban League's BEAP program. She is a huge supporter of education and a huge supporter of personal development and economic development in this community. I'd like for you to give Ms. Harris a warm Senate welcome. Thank you. Thank you.
To the Honorable Butch Miller, President Pro Tem, and the Senate, thank you for acknowledging the work the National Coalition of 100 Black Women continue to do locally and nationally. The 100 Black Women is a 40-year-old advocacy organization that advocates on behalf of women and girls in the area of education, health, and economic empowerment. It is an honor to be recognized at the General Assembly as a leader in the community and as the national president, overseeing 61 chapters throughout the United States, and 5 of those chapters being in the state of Georgia. Some of NCBW focus consists of leadership development as well as public policy awareness. As one of the largest state legislation in the nation, I take pride knowing that the Assembly represent and acknowledge citizens in the state of Georgia. As a leader in the great state of Georgia, it is our duty to listen, understand, incorporate views, and adopt effective policy changes that work for the people. Please know that this recognition I received today stemmed from support of a wonderful, loving family, friends, and colleagues that have supported, guided, and placed their faith in me. I'm very fortunate to have so many experiences. So thank you, and I'd like to acknowledge all of the 100 Black women and our friends that are here with us today. Please stand. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Is there objection to the resolution? Hearing none, the resolution is adopted. At this time, this co-pilot will turn this aircraft back over to the pilot. Thank you all for your presence.
All right, we have another special guest with us today. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the resolution?
Senate Resolution 851 by Senator Kennedy of the 18th and others. A resolution commending Thomaston Upson Community Heart and Soul and recognizing March 2nd, 2020 as Thomaston Upson Community Heart and Soul Day at State Capitol and for other purposes. Whereas Orton Family Foundation developed the Community Heart and Soul process as a catalyst for positive change in small cities and towns. And whereas to date, Thomaston Upson Community Heart and Soul has connected with more than 5,800 citizens who have taken time to share what they love about the community, their hopes and concerns, and even their personal stories, all of which will directly impact local decision making. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body commend Thomaston Upson Community Heart and Soul and recognize March 2nd, 2020 as Thomaston Upson Community Heart and Soul Day at the State Capitol. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. Chair would like to call upon the senator from the 15th, 18th to introduce our special guest today.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning. I have the honor of representing all of Upson County, which includes the fine city of Thomaston, and we've got some of Thomaston and Upson County's finest folks today. We're recognizing Thomaston Upson Community Heart and Soul Day. This is a 2-year program, and the Upson County was the first folks to, in fact, engage in and avail itself of the Orton Family Foundation, which developed the Community Heart and Soul process as a catalyst for positive change in small towns and cities around. 66 towns and 14 states across the country have undertaken Community Heart and Soul initiatives. I want to commend my friends at the Georgia EMC, whom the Upson County President Neil Trice is here with us, for the development team that recognized the Community Heart and Soul program as something that we needed to do in Upson County. It's a superior resource for home building strong communities and strong economies. The Orton Family Foundation, the Georgia EMC, Upson EMC, Unite Upson, Upson County Board of Commissioners, and Thomaston City Council all collaborated to be the first to bring Orton Community Heart and Soul to Georgia. Jennifer Rogers served as the project coordinator and led the Thomaston Upson Community Heart and Soul program and was instrumental in the success of the program. The folks on the podium with me at the rostrum here, I'm joined by, as I said, Jennifer Rogers, the director of the program, Norman Allen, our county commission chair for Upson County. The mayor of Thomaston, J.D. Stallings, is here, as I already said, Neil Trice with EMC, and Sarah Leiter. These are the great folks. Ms. Rogers, would you please come address us?
It's an honor and privilege to be here today. This is a perfect example of collaboration between Georgia EMC, Upson EMC, the Orton Family Foundation, City of Thomaston, and the Upson County Commissioners. Together, we involved everyone, determined what matters most, and are playing the long game for success. The future is looking promising in Thomaston Upson. For more information on Community Heart and Soul, go to communityheartandsoul.org. Thank you.
Mr. Secretary, can you please read the resolution, please?
Senate Resolution 592 by Senator Parent of the 42nd and others. A resolution recognizing and congratulating the Georgia Council of Teachers of Mathematics on the grand occasion of its 60th anniversary on February 4th, 2020, and for other purposes. Whereas the mission of GCTM is to promote high-quality mathematics education for all students, encourage an active interest in mathematics and mathematics education, and promote ongoing professional development for mathematics education, and reward excellence in the teaching of mathematics in this state. And whereas it is abundantly fitting and proper that the outstanding accomplishments of this extraordinary organization be appropriately recognized for its ability to highlight the connection between mathematically literate citizens and economic development. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body recognize and congratulate the Georgia Council of Teachers of Mathematics on the grand occasion of its 60th anniversary on February 4th, 2020, and extend best wishes for its future success. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. Chair would like to call upon the senator from the 42nd to introduce our special guest today.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is my honor to recognize the Georgia Council of Teachers of Mathematics on the occasion of its 60th anniversary. The mission of the Georgia Council of Teachers of Mathematics is to promote high-quality mathematics education for all students, encourage an interest in mathematics among our students, and promote professional development and excellence in the teaching of math. We all understand how important mathematics education is for our students to have the skills necessary to thrive in our modern global economy. The Georgia Council of Teachers of Mathematics is an important part of highlighting the connection between mathematically literate citizens and economic development. Joining us here today at the podium are Denise Huddleston, Debbie Paz, Dawn Slater, Angelique Allen, and Bill Shalito. They hail from Atlanta, Duluth, and Marietta. Colleagues, please join us in welcoming and recognizing the Georgia Council of Teachers of Mathematics and celebrating their 60th anniversary. And now we'll hear a few words from Ms. Denise Huddleston.
On behalf of the Georgia Council of Teachers of Mathematics, thank you for the resolution for Math Day. GCTM is made up of classroom teachers from preschool to graduate school and non-teachers who share an interest in mathematics education in our state. As was stated, the mission of GCTM is to promote a high-quality mathematics education for all students in our state. Georgia students deserve and are capable of meeting the demands of rigorous mathematics instruction to support the development of mathematical literacy and proficiency required for students to succeed in careers and a global economy. Georgia's economic growth is enhanced by the preparedness of its students, particularly in the STEM areas. Thank you for recognizing and supporting a strong mathematics education in Georgia. GCTM is ready to serve as a resource to you as issues related to mathematics education arise. Thank you.
Mr. Secretary, can you please read the resolution for our next special guests?
Senate Resolution 845 by Senator Jackson of the 2nd and others. A resolution commending Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated and recognizing March 2nd, 2020 as Phi Beta Sigma Day at the state capitol and for other purposes. Whereas Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated was founded on January 9th, 1914 at Howard University in Washington, D.C. And whereas the founders deeply wished to create an organization that viewed itself as a part of the general community rather than apart from the general community. And whereas today Phi Beta Sigma has blossomed into an international organization of leaders. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body commend the members of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity, Inc. for their service to the community and the country and recognize March 2nd, 2020 as Phi Beta Sigma Day at the state capitol. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. Chair calls upon the senator from the 2nd to introduce our special guest today.
Good morning, colleagues. Today we celebrate Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Day at our state capitol. Phi Beta Sigma fraternity was founded January 9th, 1914 at the distinguished Howard University. They wanted to organize a Greek letter fraternity that would truly exemplify the ideas of brotherhood, scholarship, and service. Today, Phi Beta Sigma is an international organization of leaders. Right now in Georgia, they're made up of 1,000 active members. They have been instrumental in mentoring programs. They have been instrumental in scholarship programs, but they have been instrumental in changing the need for community service. They have established organizations such as Phi Beta Sigma National Foundation, Phi Beta Sigma Federal Credit Union, and the Sigma Beta Club Foundation. They are changing the lives of young people. But before I introduce the state director, I'd like to recognize the members in the gallery, that's members of Phi Beta Sigma. At this time, we'll have State Director, Mr. Irby, say some words.
Good morning. Recognizing our Lieutenant Governor, Jeff Duncan, recognizing Senator Lester Jackson. I am Monalito Irby, serving as the State Director of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. where our motto is culture for service and service for humanity. We have 3 big programs that we are invest in, that's bigger and better business, social action, and education. And we live by the principles of brotherhood, scholarship, and service. We are proud to be the inclusive we instead of the exclusive we. I'm happy to have with us our regional director from Miami, Florida, Brother Roy Edmonds. We have our first vice state director, Brother Terrence Houston. We have our director of social action, Brother Dolphus Blackman. And we have our advisor to the state board, Brother Marcelo Stewart. Thank you for having us today.
We have some very, very special guests with us today, and I'd like to call upon the senator from the 35th to introduce them to us.
Okay. Good morning. Thank you, Mr. President, and I am proud to stand before you today and recognize the constituents of State Senate District 35. These upstanding community members make up some of the best and brightest in Georgia. It covers Douglasville, Lithia Springs, Union City, Fairburn, the city of South Fulton, and portions of East Point and College Park. And I am very, very proud and honored to offer myself to serve them. To provide a little background about our district, it's made up of about 200,000 people of voting age spread across close to 215 square miles. 90% of its citizens have graduated from high school. 55% have gone to higher education. 8% are foreign born, and 9% are veterans. The median age of our district is 35 years old, and over 60% of the residents fall into the working age population, 18 through 64. As you can see, we have a diverse district. Our district has a little bit of everything, making it a wonderful place to live, work, and play. It's a home to notable citizens, many of whom I have brought here and recognized with privileged resolutions. And without further ado, it's my honor and privilege to introduce the Mayor Pro Tem of the City of South Fulton, Mayor Pro Tem Carmelita Gums. And we have some citizens that are in the gallery on both sides, on the House and the Senate side. But I will let our Mayor Pro Tem come forward now.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator James. On behalf of the City of South Fulton, it is a pleasure to be here for District 35 Constituent Day. I want to take a moment to recognize some of my colleagues. I have Council Member Helen Willis here, also City Employee LaShondra Littles, and we have some other constituents as well. We have Mr. Lamar Carr and Ms. Urel Hemley. So again, it is a pleasure to be here today, and thank you so much for having us, Senator James.
Okay, thank you. Let's give all of them a warm Senate welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's go take some pictures. Does any senator wish to rise on a point of personal privilege? Any senator wish to rise on a point of personal privilege? Chair recognizes the senator from the 40th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. This week is Women in Construction Week, and we have some women in construction here with us today at the Capitol. Would you please, in the gallery, stand and be recognized? I was happy to be asked to recognize women in construction, not only because I get to wear this cool hard hat, but I also know a little something about being a woman in a male-dominated field. Only 10% of people working in construction are women. The women in our gallery are carpenters, but women in construction work in all areas of the industry, from tradeswomen to administrative professionals, business owners, to construction managers in a variety of companies across Georgia. These women not only blaze the path for others in the industry, sorry, it keeps falling off, through the National Association of Women in Construction, they find camaraderie and professional development, as well as opportunities to serve our communities and educate children about the possibilities of working in the construction industry. I want to commend and thank you all for everything you do in our communities and our state. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
You have a consent calendar of privileged resolutions before you. Does any senator wish to remove a resolution from the consent calendar? The chair sees none. Is there objection to the adoption of the resolutions on the consent calendar? Chair hears none, and the resolutions on the consent calendar are adopted. Are there any motions to withdraw and commit? The chair sees none. Ready for the rules calendar? Mike, you ready for the rules calendar? All right, we're going to move on to the rules calendar. We are going to move on to the rules calendar. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of Senate Bill 271?
Senate Bill number 271 by Senator Kennedy of the 18th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Title 15 of the OCGA relating to courts and Code Section 47.2.263 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to credit for certain past service as an assistant director attorney or employee of the prosecuting attorney's counsel, payment of full employee contributions, and credit for service as a full-time law assistant, so as to rename law assistants at law clerks, and staff attorneys, and for other purposes. Mr. President, on February 26, 2020, the Senate Committee on Retirement recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted by Senator Black, Chair. An actual investigation by the Department of Audits and Accounts is attached. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 18th to speak to Senate Bill 271.
Good morning, colleagues, and thank you, Mr. President. Bring to you Senate Bill 271. This is a update of really one word in our code section. 15.2.19 of OCGA refers to law assistants as those people that work for judges and in the capacity of having a Juris Doctorate degree or otherwise being a practicing lawyer. Used to be called law assistant. We're simply updating the code to refer to them as law clerks and staff attorneys because the positions referred to within Section 1 and Section 1 of the bill are all referring to people that have a law degree. You'll find the same consistent change throughout the sections in SB 271. This comes to you at the request of the Council of Superior Court Judges, who simply wanted to update the use of the term and make sure we're keeping up with modern times. Happy to answer any questions, Mr. President.
Senator, you have no questions.
May I have just a moment in personal privilege and recognize some very fine folks over to the right, the Peach Queens, Mr. President. They were not able to get over here from the House earlier, but we're delighted to have them and want to welcome them to the Senate chamber with your permission.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Welcome to the Senate.
Thank you. I yield the well.
Does any other senator wish to speak to Senate Bill 271? The chair sees none. Is there objection or agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 51, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of Senate Bill 301?
Senate Bill number 301 by Senator Tillery of the 19th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 6 of Title 42 of the OCGA relating to general provisions regarding detainers so as to revise temporary custody of provisions of inmates who have been charged with subsequent felony offenses while under sentence and in custody of the department and for other purposes. Mr. President, on February 26, 2020, the Senate Committee on Public Safety recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted by Senator Albers, Chair. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Public Safety offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 301. A bill to be titled an act to amend Article 3 of Chapter 5 of Title 42 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to conditions of detention in state and county correctional institutions so as to allow a county sheriff to request an inmate of the state penal system awaiting trial to remain in state custody in certain instances, provide for the Commissioner of Corrections with authority to grant such a request, provide for the prohibition of the transfer of such inmates and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 19th to speak to Senate Bill 301. I know we got a lot of moving parts this morning in here, but I would ask for everyone's undivided attention with the senator in the well. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President, for your leadership of the chamber. I present to you, members of the Senate, Senate Bill 301. It started out as a local issue that I realize actually carries a lot more statewide impact. What we have right now is, in a lot of situations, prisoners who are inmates already in state custody are committing additional crimes. It could be prison riots, it could be other things that happen inside the prison for which they are earning additional felonies. During that process, what we do is we bring them to the local county jail, local county courthouse, where that prison is located, and we book them again. We have to go through a booking process. We carry them back to the state prison to finish out their underlying sentence, but sometimes we're not able to adjudicate the subsequent crime before they age out or they do their time on the first sentence. In that instance, we then carry them back again to the county jail where we house them awaiting adjudication of the second crime. Some of these people who have been in prison longer terms are a little bit more hardened. They've learned a little bit more gang activity. They've been experienced the things that they can learn in prisons. And we're then mixing that population with more of the county misdemeanor population. Some folks have referred to it maybe as the county drunks. And we're proliferating gang activity in that process. What Senate Bill 301 seeks to do is say, hey, listen, if you were in state custody when you committed your second underlying offense or second offense, you can be held in state custody till we can adjudicate that second offense and keep the mixing of those jail populations, mixing our hardened criminals with some of our more misdemeanor affiliates. Mr. President, that's the essence of the bill. I'll yield if there are any questions.
Chair recognizes your seatmate, the senator from the 17th.
Does the senator yield?
Yes, sir.
Senator, how does this affect my friend Otis?
Well, your friend Otis, are you meaning your friend Otis from Andy Griffith?
Yes, sir.
Your friend Otis from Andy Griffith usually does not have the training, or may not have the training that someone in a who's a prison guard would have, as far as guarding more hardened criminals. So what we're trying to do in this instance is make sure that Otis is still ready to take care of the town drunk, and he makes sure that Barney's still got the bullet in his pocket, but he's not necessarily having to bring in the whole skirt team every time we move a prisoner from a state prison to a county institution.
Do you further yield?
Yes, sir.
And Senator, how does this fiscally impact Andy Griffith?
That is a great question, Senator. In fact, such a great question, I think one day you should be a chairman of a committee that handles such things, hinting towards next year. But here's how it affects. The counties right now are bearing the cost when those prisoners are housed at a county level. This will move some of that cost possibly to the state level, but it doesn't move it automatically. The commissioner of the Department of Corrections still has say over whether or not that move can happen based upon space, among other things.
And last question, if you will yield for one more.
Yes, sir.
On a serious note, how does this help us with combating gangs around our state?
Thank you, and thank you for hitting on a big point. Again, one of the things that we're seeing is that our local jails are becoming centers for the proliferation of gang activity. And what we're hoping we can do in this instance is keep those populations separate so that our hardened criminals can stay more in the prison system as we've set up and built a hardened system to hold them, and our county jails can be more for the misdemeanor populations.
You have no more questions, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will yield the well and urge your favorable consideration of Senate Bill 301.
Any other senator wish to speak to or against Senate Bill 301? Chair sees none. The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to adoption of the committee substitute? Chair hears none, and the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 52, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. For what purpose does the senator from the 7th rise?
Mr. President, I move that the rules be suspended so two bills can be read for the first time and assigned to committee.
Ms. Secretary, can you read the caption on both bills?
Senate Bill number 473 by Senator Harper of the 7th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Chapter 3 of Title 12 of the OCGA relating to conservation and natural resources, so as to transfer duties, powers, responsibilities, and other authority relative to historic preservation from the Department of Natural Resources to the Department of Community Affairs. To amend Article 3 of Chapter 2 of Title 40 of the OCGA relating to prestige license plates and special plates for certain persons and vehicles, so as to disperse the fund allocated from the Department of Natural Resources, Department of Community Affairs, and for other purposes. Senate Bill number 474 by Senator Harper of the 7th. A bill to be titled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 7 of Title 50 of the OCGA relating to general provisions regarding the Department of Economic Development. So to provide for the Department of Natural Resources to construct, operate, maintain, and to supply informational materials at welcome centers assigned by the governor, to provide for the installation and operation of automated teller machines and cash dispensing machines at welcome centers, to provide for the installation, operation, and setting of product prices for vending machines, and for other purposes.
Senator from the 7th has asked for unanimous consent that the rules be suspended for the first reading and reference of two Senate bills. Is there objection? Chair hears none, and those bills are assigned to natural resources. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of Senate Bill 351 back on the rules calendar?
Senate Bill number 351 by Senator Watson of the 1st and others. A bill to be titled an act to provide for the holding of non-binding advisory referendum election to determine whether the qualified electors of the state of Georgia desire to continue the advancement of time from standard time to daylight saving time or to preserve time, standard time or daylight saving time year-round and for other purposes. Mr. President, on February 20th, 2020, the Senate Committee on Government Oversight recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted by Senator Heath of the 31st Chair. That concludes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 1st to speak to Senate Bill 351.
Thank you, Mr. President. Certainly my honor to be here presenting Senate Bill 351. This is a non-binding advisory referendum election in 2020 general election, having to do with switching between standard time, daylight savings time, the twice a year to observe these times year-round. Federal law allows states lying within a single time zone, like Georgia, to move to permanent standard time only. The state cannot move to a permanent daylight savings time. The U.S. Congress established standard time zones in daylight savings time, also known as the Standard Time Act, in 1918. It was clarified as a Uniform Time Act of 1966, and the DOT is charged to carry this out. Only Congress can change the length of the daylight savings time observation period. However, since 2015, at least 39 states have proposed legislation to change their observance of daylight savings time. To me, the thing that drives this home and what was important to me as a physician is that the most important thing statistically significant is that there is a higher risk of acute myocardial infarction or heart attacks observed during the 2 weeks following the daylight savings times transition. Primarily, it is seen certainly in the fall back, but is also seen more prominently and statistically significant in the spring forward. This was published in the Journal of Clinical Medicine in February 2019. In June 2019, in another Journal of Biological Rhythms, also had a position paper on why should we abolish daylight savings time. To me, the most fun part of this has been looking through the literature, and the one that I found most interesting, I think that many lawyers and all of us should find this interesting, from the Association of Psychological Science, that the title reads, "Sleepy Punishers are Harsh Punishers, Daylight Saving Time and Legal Sentences." Basically, judges dole out longer sentences when they have been sleep deprived. And they studied this in the natural quasi-manipulation of sleep deprivation during the shift to daylight savings times in the spring, and they analyzed the data. So basically, sleepy judges are harsh punishers. There are other articles, too, about daylight savings times, changes for the bad for the brain, the impact of daylight savings times on sleep and related behaviors, and there are also review articles. What this bill does is very simple. It allows on the ballot 3 options. The state shall continue to observe the current system of switching between standard time and daylight savings times twice a year, so no change. Option 2, the state shall not observe daylight savings time. And option 3, the state shall observe daylight savings time year-round if authorized by Congress. Mr. President, I'll be happy to entertain any questions. Otherwise, I'll yield the well.
Chair recognizes the minority leader for a question.
Senator Yield?
Yes.
Senator, do you have any concerns that the referendum may not bring forth all the debate and complexities of the issue, and that because it's a public debate, may get a large vote one way or the other when they don't really have all the complex issues? You brought forth some of the complex issues on health effects and others, and I'm sure there's issues on the other side. Do you have any concerns that it may not be a well-debated public vote that might lead the legislature
Thank you for bringing that question. And, you know, I trust the electorate to make an informed decision. So, no, I do not have any concerns like that.
Senator, you have no more questions.
Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against Senate Bill 351? Chair sees none. Is there objection or agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none, and the report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none and the main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 53, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Ms. Secretary, can you please read the caption to Senate Bill 373?
Senate Bill number 373 by Senator Kennedy of the 18th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Article 8 of Chapter 3 of Title 14 and Part 6 of Article 4 of Chapter 3 of Title 46 of the OCGA relating to directors and officers of nonprofit corporations and directors and officers of electric membership corporations and foreign electric cooperatives, respectively, so as to change provisions relating to the responsibilities and standard of care of directors and officers of certain corporations, to clarify the ability of directors and officers to rely on other individuals in the performance of their duties and for other purposes. Mr. President, on February 20th, 2020, the Senate Committee on Judiciary recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted by Senator Stone of the 23rd chair. Mr. President, Senator Parent of the 42nd and Kennedy of the 18th offered the following amendment. Amend Senate Bill 373 by replacing 4 with 3 on lines 151 and 219, by deleting lines 241 through 243, by replacing 1 strike through 2 on line 244 with 1, by replacing 2 strike through 3 on line 249 with 2, by replacing 3 strike through 4 on line 252 with 3. That concludes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 18th to speak to the measure and the amendment.
Thank you again, Mr. President, and good morning again, colleagues. I bring to you Senate Bill 373. For those of you that were here in 2017, you may remember that we amended the code section to deal with banks and other for-profit corporations to restore the standard by which an officer or director could be held liable back to that of gross negligence, which was the standard that had always been until a judicial decision came and altered or impaired that. That bill was presented and came out of the Senate and became law. The problem is that when we made that code change, we did not correct and make the same amendment to the nonprofit section of the code. So to make all of this uniform, that's what simply Senate Bill 373 does, so that we have the same standard for officer and director liability, whether it's a corporation, a nonprofit corporation, or a membership entity. In the spirit of getting us off to a great start and bipartisanship, you will see Amendment Number 1, sponsored by Senator Parent, and I appreciate, Senator from the 42nd. And I appreciate the Senator from the 42nd working with me. There is a minor change, and she will speak to her amendment, but it is deemed to be a friendly amendment. The stakeholders that have an interest in this legislation are all in favor of it. So I would urge you to vote for the bill as amended with Amendment Number 1. And Mr. President, I'm happy to answer any questions.
You have no questions.
Thank you. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 42nd to speak to Amendment Number 1.
Thank you, Mr. President. My amendment would essentially strike lines 241 to 243. The reason for that, and this is the part that deals with conflicts of interest for officers and directors of electric membership corporations. The reason for that is if we kept these lines in there, that would make the conflict of interest standards different than for any other nonprofit or for-profit in the state. And I thought that was, that it should line up better with the other organizations and what the standards they have to be held to. Very much appreciate the author of the bill, as well as the some of the interested parties and the EMCs for working with me on this amendment. And so I ask your favorable consideration for amendment number 1. Thank you, Mr. President. I'm happy to answer questions.
You have no questions.
Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak to Senate Bill 373 or amendment number 1? The chair sees none. All right, we're going to take up amendment number 1. Ms. Secretary, are we prepared to take up amendment? All right, we're first going to take up amendment number 1. Is there objection to amendment number 1? The chair hears none, and amendment number 1 is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none, and the report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill as amended. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 53, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed as amended. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of Senate Bill 374?
Senate Bill number 374 by Senator Kennedy of the 18th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Article 8 of Chapter 11 of Title 9 of the OCGA relating to provisional and final remedies and special proceedings. So it's revise and provide for new requirements under the Georgia Civil Practice Act for settlement of offers and arraignments for all tort claims for personal injury, bodily injury, and death, and for all other purposes. Mr. President, on February 24, 2020, the Senate Committee on Insurance and Labor recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted by Senator Jones, the 25th Chair. Mr. President, Senator Stone with the 23rd offer the following amendment number 1 to amend the substitute to Senate Bill 374 by deleting from line 43 the words may be done verbally or and inserting shall be. Mr. President, Senator Tilley of the 19th and Senator Mullis of the 53rd offer the following amendment. Amend Senate Bill 374 by replacing all medical with medical on line 27. Mr. President, Senator Ligon of the 3rd, Stone of the 23rd, and Strickland of the 17th offer the following amendment. Amend Senate Bill 374 by replacing line 63 with the following. And death arising on or after July 1st, 2020, notwithstanding any other provision of this code section, nothing in this code section shall be construed to preclude the offerer or insured from pursuing a recipient for negligence or bad faith for failure to settle or for adjusting a claim or an act as an affirmative defense in any such cause of action. That completes the order, Mr. President. Oh, no, it does not complete the order, Mr. President. Mr. President, Senator Jordan of the 6th offered amendment number 4 to amend Senate Bill 374 by striking the word both and reinserting the word parties at the end of line 38 by striking line 39. Back, please, order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 18th. Must be senator from the 18th day. Senator from the 18th to speak to Senate Bill 374.
Good morning, colleagues. If you'll listen to me one more time, I promise this is the last bill that I'll present to you today. Senate Bill 374 deals with an issue and a problem that we have with regard to something called Holt demands. As most of you probably know, when a plaintiff who's been injured wants to make a demand through their attorney for the full amount of the policy limits of the insurance that may be applicable, they can do so by filing what's called and serving a Holt demand. And in those circumstances, the plaintiff, through their lawyer, is asking for the full amount of the policy limits for the insurance company to have to pay that. Many times, the insurance company, in fact, wants to pay the full amount of the exposure of the insurance company, and they want to write the check for the full amount. If it's a $1 million policy, they want to pay $1 million. This bill in no way impairs issues related to bad faith claims. This simply clarifies and makes certain that we understand, and more importantly, that the insurance companies understand and that the plaintiff's lawyers understand the process by which a full policy limits demand is made and how the insurance company then can comply and be in compliance with answering and responding to make sure that full payment is made if that's the decision of the insurance company under those circumstances. Again, this bill does not address any issue related to impairing bad faith claims. And what do I mean by that? Well, a bad faith claim is where we have bought insurance, you have a claim made against you, and the insurance company has an opportunity to settle that claim within the policy limits, but they choose not to. And when they don't do that, they have effectively exposed you and your personal assets to a claim continuing by the plaintiff that is beyond the protection afforded you by the insurance policy that you have. And when the company, an insurance company, behaves that way, if they behave in bad faith, you then have a right to go back to your insurance company if you are exposed, your assets are exposed, and you have a right to sort of bad faith claim, as you should, as we should, and nothing about that is changed at all. This simply makes sure that the ground rules are clear for how bad faith claims are presented to the insurance company and the terms that are necessary and the terms under which the insurance company responds, again, when they want to write that check for the full amount of the policy limits that's part of that is subject to the claim that's being made. There are some amendments. I'll wait to speak. I know some of these amendments I'm okay with, but we'll wait. I think there's some more coming in, and I'll address those when I come back to the well. Again, this is one of those matters that I've had a number of my plaintiff's lawyers' friends tell me that they're glad that I'm bringing this, simply because what we have, unfortunately, is just a few bad apples in that practice law and represent plaintiffs that will send very intentionally vague and confusing demand letters, so that it's, in essence, it's a gotcha game, it's a gamesmanship trying to trick up the insurance company who is actually desirous of writing the full amount of the check to pay the claim, the full amount of policy limits. And it's done for reasons to try to create excess exposure. This just makes sure that we've got a clear path forward and everybody understands what the rules are. So, with that, Mr. President, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 6th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
I will certainly yield to my friend from the 6th.
With respect to line 21 and 22, it talks about, well, what is an itemization of what the claimant or claimants will provide to each releasee?
I'm sorry, you're asking what is the itemization?
Yeah, what is it?
Well, it's the itemization of the claims that are being made by the counsel on behalf of the plaintiff for what they're seeking a recovery for.
Okay. Because I had no idea what it meant, and I'm
Okay.
an attorney. So that's why I was
Okay.
wondering exactly what your itemization is usually used when we're talking about damages or kind of special damages and here kind of what's claimed. But with respect to this, the language is ambiguous at best.
Well, Senator, I appreciate the question. I appreciate your position. I don't think it's ambiguous. I think it's clear that it says for any type of release, whether the release is full or limited, and an itemization of what the claimants will provide to the releasee. I think it simply is consistent with the spirit of why 9/11/67.1 was enacted, and it's why we need this legislation to make clear what are the obligations on plaintiff's counsel to provide on behalf of their client, and what is it that the insurance company is going to receive so that we have a consistent path and a consistent model to follow each time.
Will the senator yield?
I sure.
I understand the purpose behind the statute. My problem is if I'm a plaintiff's counsel and I don't even understand what this language means, then it defeats the purpose necessarily that this is going to give me kind of a very straightforward model to follow when I actually make an offer to settle.
Senator, again, I appreciate the question. I don't find the language ambiguous. I think it's straightforward. I think it's the plain meaning of the language of itemization of what the claimant or claimants will provide.
Will the senator yield for
Sure.
one more question?
Yes.
Isn't it true that by striking the word reasonable on, let's see, where
What
is it?
line, Senator?
I'm looking for it. Clarification. Line 44. Isn't it true that by striking the word reasonable, the bill will allow for unreasonable clarifications and questions by insurance adjusters that's just intended to delay the settlement of a dispute?
No, not at all, Senator. In fact, you probably have some experience, and I know you practice, but you don't engage in this type of gamesmanship. But what we're trying to protect here and make sure that the ground rules are clear is that if an attempt is needed to seek a clarification, that attempt is a reasonable clarification and not deemed to be a counteroffer. That avoids the gotcha and the gamesmanship of again, one of these bad apples, one of these bad actors saying, you know what, you sought any form of clarification, or you sought a clarification, and I plaintiff's counsel deem that to be a counteroffer. I think this is consistent with that, and I think it's appropriate.
Again, Senator, by taking out reasonable, it would seem to have the opposite effect. Thank you.
Well, Senator, by taking out reasonable, it simply means that seeking any clarification is not going to be deemed a counteroffer, and that precludes the continued gamesmanship.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 48th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the gentleman yield?
I do to my friend, the former federal prosecutor.
Thank you, sir. I would like to know your position on two of the amendments, because that will cut some of my questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you in agreement with Amendment 1?
Yes, I am in agreement with the senator from the 23rds and would have endorsed that, but it made its way to the rostrum before I could sign it. So I'm fine with number 1.
Okay, great. And how about Amendment 2?
I have not seen Amendment 2, Senator. Okay.
Are you in agreement with Amendment 2?
I'm not in agreement. Senator, let me, I'm going to consult with the author of that amendment. It may be that we can come to terms with that. Let me work on that, and I'll come back to you. And I'll be happy to answer any questions when I come back. I will close the debate and be happy to answer any questions then.
Okay, thank you, sir. Could I have that back
Sure.
just 1 second so I have note of it? Thank you. Does the senator further yield?
Yes, I do.
So my understanding is, and I will tell you, I have some experience with Holt demands, but not as much as you probably do. But my concern here is that it is a process that does not to be changed, because you mentioned there are a few bad apples here. I'm concerned that we're changing major laws for a few bad apples rather than looking at a holistic system that, which I believe currently exists, and therefore doesn't need to be tweaked for a few bad apples. I think that a few bad apples might need to be reprimanded by a judge or have a bar complaint or any other number of remedies. So I apologize, I'm not sure there's a question there other than why is this needed?
Sure, Senator, I appreciate the question, and I think I appreciate the spirit of the question, but I think your premise, the fundamental premise of your question is simply incorrect. This is not a wholesale change of a law. This is not a rewriting of the provisions that deal with bad faith. As I said at the top of my comments, this deals only with the procedure by which the parties that are engaging in this communication, how they communicate, and the scope of that communication. Again, it does not impair in any way bad faith claims. The substantive law on that, which I would believe you would be in favor of, I am in favor of and is not touched by this. That's something when an insurer deals with their policyholder who has paid the premiums and it comes time for them to be responsible and pay the policy limits, if that's what the facts demand, the insurance company needs to pay that. And when they fail to do that and protect the insurer, we ought to have, and that plaintiff, that person, policyholder, ought to have an ability to go after their insurer for bad faith if they conduct the management of that file and the payment of the claim, or in this case, non-payment. If they behave in bad faith, they ought to be held responsible. Nothing about 374 changes that. This just makes sure that this very important area of the law, that we have the ground rules by which the communication is made, what has to be in the communication, and prohibits the gamesmanship of when you have someone that does try to rig the system in a way that's trying to not ensure that the policy limits are paid, but trying to get excess verdicts, not because substantively it's warranted, but because they played a game and tried to trick the other person on the other end of the letter.
Does the senator further yield?
Yes.
Isn't it true that you're, in this bill, applying the expedited motor vehicle litigation framework to all tort cases?
Yes, it does, and I appreciate that question. I think that's a good thing, and I would think you and I would think the lawyers and other people in our chamber would welcome that. This simply expands and takes the process, this model that we've come up with. And by the way, when the idea was arrived at some 6-8 years ago to enact 9/11/67-1, it came out of this chamber unanimously. And it did so because there was the need for us to have a codified process of how is a Holt demand to occur. And it's worked fine until we've got a few bad apples that are trying to game the system and work around the intent of 9/11/67.1 and get around what is otherwise the normal professional way that many plaintiffs' lawyers communicate on behalf of their injured victims and injured plaintiffs, how they communicate with an insurance company. This simply clarifies that process so that we don't have gamesmanship. And if you think about it also, this also inures to the benefit of folks that are injured. It inures to the benefit of plaintiffs. Why? It does so because by making sure we've got clarity in a process and a model that everyone understands what the rules are, that ensures more prompt payment to the plaintiffs from the insurance companies for the claims that they're making. And again, I remind you, these circumstances arise and apply when you've got an insurance company that wants to write a check for the full amount that they could be liable for under their insurance policy. They want to pay it now, not wait, but go ahead and pay it. Let's make sure we have a good system and a model that ensures that that can happen and folks get paid.
May I make one comment?
Well, I would prefer a question, but Senator,
Yeah,
that's
well,
up to you.
You're saying the insurance company's sitting there waiting to pay. That hasn't always been my experience, even with Holt demands. And so my concern is that, again, we're changing a system that works.
Well,
but
Senator,
I appreciate
yeah.
you made many good points here. I just want to make sure you see what I'm saying as well.
I do, and I appreciate the issue you're raising, but again, I take issue with the characterization that we're changing the system. We're not. It's a slight tweak to the model so that it's fair.
Thank you, sir.
Does the senator continue to yield?
Yes, I do.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 42nd for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
I do, to my friend of the 42nd.
Thank you, Senator. You mentioned a couple times how we have a few bad apples that are looking to game the system that are mostly attorneys. Are they exclusively attorneys? Why are we expanding this to right now the law exists where when an attorney is involved that would maybe understand the system well enough to try to even game it, the law applies. This
Sure.
expands it greatly to anybody, someone who wants to try to settle quickly without engaging an attorney. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I can. Thank you, Senator, and I do appreciate that question. You raise a good point. However, what we've got to do is make sure if we're going to have a model that we agree works, is workable, and is fair, and fair to everybody, fair to the person making the claim or the person making a claim on behalf of someone else, and it's fair to the recipient of that claim, which is the insurance company, the model needs to be the same. The problem is if we don't expand this to include everybody, include plaintiffs, you expose and create the possibility that someone will get a lawyer to ghostwrite one of these Holt demands on behalf of a plaintiff, and it allows the perpetuation of the trickery, of the gamesmanship, and all that goes along with that with these multi-page letters. So if we're going to say that the rule ought to be X, and here's the model for fair, efficient, and equitable communication, then that should apply to lawyers, it should apply to plaintiffs, it should apply to everybody. There's not a reason to make an exception.
But Senator, if the situation isn't different in navigating this system when you have an attorney versus not having an attorney, wouldn't you agree that there's no point for you or I to have a job?
Well, now that's a entirely different issue, Senator. You're raising something that doesn't apply here. And I'm not here trying to create more work for lawyers or less work for lawyers, but I understood your question to simply be one of, why does this apply to non-lawyers? And the answer is, if we're going to create a fair model for communication that has standards, it ought to apply to everybody.
No, but my point is, if you're dealing with a complicated legal issue, typically that might be when someone engages a lawyer. Someone who chooses not to, our system recognizes usually that they are in a different position than someone who's represented by counsel. So I take what you've already said, but wouldn't you agree that that's the reason attorneys have a job, that typically things like this require a level of expertise?
Well, if what you're saying, Senator, is that folks ought to hire more lawyers when they file claims, I'm with you 100%. And that when the claims are made, folks need to hire lawyers to defend them. I completely agree with that as well. But to say that the statute, Senator, the logical extension of your argument is that we should write statutes so that claimants have to go hire lawyers to write a letter for them. And,
Well,
I
but
don't think you're advocating that position, and I don't think we should write laws so that that is the end result of, or the intent of writing statutes.
So the problem is gamesmanship by claimants not represented by attorneys as well. Is that what you're saying? I hadn't heard you elucidate that before.
Senator, I don't know if there are problems with non-lawyers writing confusing, ambiguous, vague letters, but the problem is you will never know whether or not it was a letter written by a lawyer or not. I will never know. The insurance company will never know, because you're familiar with ghostwriting of documents. You're familiar with people that get lawyers to write letters. You're familiar with people that get lawyers to draft complaints, and then they will file them pro se. So again, we've left a big loophole in the system if we don't tighten it up and make sure that we say, here we go, here's the rules. If you're going to communicate, here are the terms. Here are the 5 terms that have to be in the document. It's limited to that, and it comes within the confines of this legislation.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, and if you'll yield for one more question.
Sure.
Couldn't the problem that you are addressing be solved really just by provision C1? Why are you changing so many other things?
Can you tell me what line
Yes,
you're...
I mean, well, I have an issue with part of it, but I'll just say the part that would seem to take care of the rationale for the bill. The material terms outlined, and I'm on line 32. The material terms outlined in subsection A shall be the only material terms which can be included in an offer to settle made under this code section. Wouldn't that gives you a definite framework that everyone would need to apply by? But you've got a whole lot of other stuff in here too, don't you agree?
No, I don't know what that whole lot of other stuff you're talking about is. I mean, if
Well,
you look at,
the
if you look,
thing I just mentioned,
hold on a minute. Let me
I can
try
give
to
you a list.
answer that in full, if I may.
Sure, of course.
If you'll find, beginning at line 17 through line 23, those are the 5 items that are in fact traditionally there. Those are the requirements of what has to be in the Holt demand. And let me explain this, and I apologize if I wasn't clear with my colleagues earlier. The reason the provisions you're talking about, Senator, in totality would be lines 30 through 33. Excuse me, lines 31 through 33, C1.
That's right.
The reason that language is important is to not only does this bill say here are the terms that have to be in a Holt demand, but these are the only terms that need to be in a Holt demand. And without that language, what you've done is that is going to the heart of what the problem is. Because the bad apples, the bad actors, will make a demand with regard to 1 through 5, and then they'll add conditions 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 20, 40. And so this ensures that.
But Senator, I'm actually agreeing with you. My
Okay.
question is,
Well, then maybe I
why
should just
do you
be
have
quiet.
the rest of the bill?
Why what?
Why do we have all these other things in the bill if those 5 things, if I agree, say I agree that what you just said is true, that the 5 things, everyone needs to understand what they are and everyone needs to abide by them and not be able to put in all these other contingencies
Sure.
that then insurance companies or whomever struggle to abide by. Why can't this bill just be 2 lines long? Why do we have all this other stuff?
Well, this other stuff, Senator, are things that need to be tweaked with regard to 91167.1. For example, I'll give you a good one. Line 60, looking at subparagraph H beginning at line 58, which goes to the conclusion of line 61. Now, you're probably aware that, and as you can read from the text on line 59, that the current code section says that the period of time to respond shall be not less than 10 days after the written acceptance of the offer to settle, and then there are 30 days in which to pay. Well, that's a total of 40 days in total, the 30 plus the 10. The problem is there can be circumstances where the date of acceptance can be in question, and so now the carrier doesn't know how long do they have to actually get the check over. So you've got your 30-day window on front, and then you've got your 10 days in which to get the payment transferred. Well, if acceptance was always deemed to be on day 30, then it would be clear that the insurance company has 40 days to transmit the funds. But if some communication is made or the plaintiffs construe that acceptance was on day 29 or let's say day 10, then there's the argument that the payment has to be received by day 20. Again, this is just a simple clarification. This doesn't impact anything substantively, but it takes away one of the ambiguities that those practitioners who deal with this issue all the time say, gives us some clarity so we don't have this continued trickery and folks trying to take advantage.
Okay, thank you very much for your time, Senator.
You're welcome. Thank you, Senator.
You have no more questions.
Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, just to lay out, there's some groundwork here. We've got 5 amendments. We've read 4 of them. Mr. Secretary, will you please read amendment number 5 for us?
Mr. President, Senator Tiller of the 19th, Strickland of the 17th, and Parent of the 42nd offer the following amendment number 5 to amend Senate Bill 374 by replacing lines 22 and 23 with the following. Itemization of what the claimant or claimants will provide to each releasee, and deleted 5, the claims to be released, and 6, an accompanying affidavit signed by the insurer and the insured affirming under oath the full policy amount and that no other insurance policies not already disclosed to the parties are applicable to the subject claim being released. That completes the order, Mr. President.
All right, we're going to call up amendment number 1 first. I'd like to recognize the senator from the 23rd to speak to amendment number 1.
Thank you, Mr. President, Senators. All Amendment 1 does is avoid confusion in the process. It makes it clear that if an insurer wants clarification on the terms given it in the offer, that it has to request that clarification in writing. The author of the bill, Senator from the 18th, has no objection to that, and I think it will help prevent these kinds of disputes from becoming a he said, she said, or swearing contest. If they need clarification, they can do an email, a fax, a letter. Verbal is not a good recipe for clarity. I'll accept any questions.
You have no questions.
Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against amendment number 1? All right, we're going to talk about amendment number 2. Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 19th, and you also have a second amendment, amendment number 5, if you'd like to speak to that also when you're in the well. 2 and 5.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's always my pleasure to speak to the Second Amendment. All the Second Amendment does is takes the words all medical and changes that to be the word medical on line 27. The reason I think that's important is because if you look back at lines 24 through 26, it talks about having everything that's reasonably obtainable. I think the words all kind of seem to clash a little bit with the reasonably obtainable portion, and ask that you favorably consider that change just to make line 27 congruent with lines 24 through 26. If there are any questions, Mr. President, I'll take them now.
You have no questions.
Mr. President, do you want me to go ahead and speak to Amendment 5 as well now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you again. Amendment 5, if you look at the way this bill is laid out now, Section A now addresses everything that can be included in a demand letter that an insurer would have to respond to, which I think is very, very important, because one of the things that's not included in there is an affidavit requirement that the insurer and the insured confirm the value of the policy. Well, why would that matter? It would matter in this instance. Suppose you send in a demand letter that says, hey, I'm demanding $25,000 per the deck sheet that I received, and later on you find out that that policy was actually worth $50,000. Well, right now you can't even confirm the value of the policy as the way I think Section A is written now. But if I can later on confirm by affidavit through the insurer and the insured that that is the full value of the policy and that no other policies exist, then I never have to file suit to begin with. If I don't have Amendment 5, I have to file suit every single time just to get the affidavit. The reason that this code section 91167.1 was enacted in 2013, by the way, was to help reduce the number of lawsuits. If I don't have Amendment 5, I'm just going to actually be creating more, because every single time the only way I can get that affidavit, or the only way I can force that affidavit rather, is by filing suit. Mr. President, if there are any questions, I'll take those.
You have no questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the will.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against amendments number 2 or 5? All right, we're going to take up amendment number 3. Chair recognizes the senator from the 3rd to speak to his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. This amendment just makes it clear that we're not getting away from or getting rid of bad faith claims, because we agree that they do need, the process needs clarification, but we also need to give assurances that this bill is not going to affect the ability to bring a claim for bad faith. It's something that everyone agreed to when the bill was being heard in committee, but this is just stating that and making that abundantly clear. I'll be glad to yield for any questions.
Senator, you have no questions.
I yield the will.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against amendment number 3? The chair sees none. All right, we're going to take up amendment number 4. The chair recognizes the senator from the 6th to speak to her amendment number 4.
Thank you, Mr. President. As indicated earlier in 2013, this was passed to try to encourage parties to settle, and especially prior to the filing of a lawsuit. And that's why there was language in there that said prior to the filing of a lawsuit. So the whole idea is we would like parties outside of the court process to settle. And that makes sense because there are less lawsuits, less monies paid in terms of litigation costs. In the court system, these things aren't tied up. With respect to my amendment specifically, currently under Georgia law, parties can settle a dispute in any manner that's agreeable to the parties. And that makes sense, right? Because we have a strong right to contract in this state. It's constitutional in nature, in that if I want to settle a dispute with the senator from the 48th, then we can come to terms and do that. And we don't have to necessarily meet certain conditions as long as there is a meeting of the minds. Many cases are settled in mediations where the parties meet face to face and verbally settle a dispute. Or I settle a lot of cases by email where I go back and forth with another attorney. Because the whole point is if we can settle something, that's what we should be encouraging parties to do. With respect to my amendment, the change in the language before us in terms of 374, the change in the language takes away the party's right to settle a matter even where there hasn't been a written offer that doesn't include all the requirements laid out in 374. And that's a problem, because if what we're saying is that for an offer and then a settlement to be valid under Georgia law, it has to comply with all of these requisites, we're setting up a system where any party can come into a court and maybe say, well, we didn't really settle. I know we said so at a mediation, but I don't have an offer with all the medical bills, with this information in it, sent by statutory overnight mail. Ergo, under Georgia law, we don't have an enforceable settlement, and I'm going to pull out of that. That actually is counter to the 2013 language and what we really wanted to push for, and arguably counter to everything that the sponsor of the bill has said. I think we all agree we want to encourage parties to settle. We want them to avoid litigation and lawsuits if they can. And why are we going to take one of the tools out of the toolbox? And I would tell you probably the most used tool with respect to that. And if we do this, we're going to see an uptick in lawsuits. We're going to see disputes not settled, and you want to talk about litigation costs going up? That's going to be the effect of this, and I don't think that that's the intention. Thank you.
All right, the senator has yielded the well. Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 18th to close debate on Senate Bill 374.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate my colleagues' time and attention to this bill. This is important. This is not just important to insurance companies. This is important to lawyers. It's important to everybody that's a policy holder, and that includes everybody under the Gold Dome, I would submit. So thank you for your attention to this. With regard to the amendments, as I've already said in my opening comments, that I am fine with, let's see, amendment number 1. That is Senator from the 23rd's amendment. I am a yes on that. That is fine. I think to limit that and tighten that language up to strike verbally so that the communications have to be in writing is a good idea. Amendment number 2 from my friend from Vidalia, the senator from the 19th. I am fine with that amendment as well, and I appreciate his sharp legal mind on that, and I think that's a fine amendment. Amendment number 3, which is from our senator from the coast, that is something we do not need. And the bottom line is, if you read J, what it says is that nothing in this code section will be construed to preclude a claim for bad faith. That's what the law says. If you read all of 91167.1, that's what it says. And as I've told you when I first came to the well, nothing about this bill impairs that. There is no reading of my bill that would impair that. And let me tell you why we all know that. And with all due respect to the senator from the 3rd, if in fact there were any language in SB 374 that gave the senator pause or concern that it did impair the right to bring a bad faith claim, he would have gone to the line and gone to the paragraph and shown you the language where he's concerned. Now, again, I appreciate his sharp legal mind on this, but it's simply something that we don't need. And the problem is when you draft legislation and you say things that are already in case law, already a part of the jurisprudence, you now create an ambiguity and you create a concern of our judicial branch when they have to review cases and say, well, was there something else the legislators were thinking? Because they just kind of stated the obvious. They just restated what the code section already says. What the senator is trying to do with the Third Amendment is already codified in case law and exists. And again, y'all remember those commercials about the Captain Obvious stating something that was the way of the world and that we already knew? Well, it's simply stating how things are. We don't need to add ambiguity. We don't need to add that vagueness. So I would urge you to vote no on amendment number 3. Amendment number 4 from the senator from the 6th. I'm not sure I followed everything and all the commentary that was made, but the bill has been vetted significantly. It came through the committee, and in fact, interestingly, the only one person spoke and asked questions about the bill and didn't talk about the provisions in this bill, but rather talked about how we need to make sure we preserve bad faith claims already. Well, we've done that, and as I've told you, and I'm now going to close this debate, you understand that it must not, because no one has come to this well and said, worry about line X because it impairs the right of a plaintiff to pursue an insurance company who doesn't deal with them fairly. We don't have that problem because the code section already is clear and gives folks that right. So I urge you to vote no on 4. And then finally, amendment number 5 from the senator from the 19th. Let me tell you why we can't do this, and I appreciate his perspective on this, but this creates yet a remaining gotcha for the insurance companies. To include provisions like contemplated in amendment number 5 would require the insurance company to come out, and remember, this is sometimes often at the very beginning of the process. The lawsuit has not even been filed, so the insurance company is getting this claim file for the first time, and they're getting some medical records, and they're getting the other things that are required in here. And to ask the insurance company to say there's no other insurance, what happens when that insurance company later learns that the plaintiff made a claim under his name, but yet there's another insurance policy by the same insurance company that perhaps was for the farm or for the company or some other entity, and the plaintiff was an employee? And there's a possible construction under that policy that the plaintiff might have some possible rights of insurance coverage. But that wasn't known to the insurance company at the time because they're 30 days after the accident. They're just at the very beginning of this whole process. So now what you've done, you've created an opportunity, a very fertile opportunity for someone to come in and later say, you know what, Mr. Insurance Company, you told us when we made our Holt demand, you told us this was the only insurance that was available. And yes, you didn't understand, and we didn't understand all the facts, and we didn't understand perhaps who he was working for and the possibility of other coverage, but you said that, and because you said it and it was wrong, even though you didn't know it was wrong at the time, you're now exposed to a bad faith claim. So again, we don't need to create that possible ambiguity. We don't need to create that loophole. Again, we're just trying to make sure that the groundwork is level, that everybody understands going forward what the rules are for these communications. So again, I appreciate your time and attention to this. I encourage you to please vote for the bill and vote yes on amendments 1, yes on amendments number 2, no on amendments 3, 4, and 5. So with that, Mr. President, I appreciate your indulgence this morning, and I appreciate my colleagues' attention to this, and I urge you to vote for the bill. I yield the will.
All right, the senator has yielded the well. We are going to start to take up the amendments. Is there objection to adopting amendment number 1? The chair hears none, and amendment number 1 is adopted. We're now going to take up amendment number 2. Is there objection to adopting amendment number 2? The chair hears none, and amendment number 2 is adopted. Is there objection to adopting amendment number 3? There is objection. All those in favor of amendment number 3 will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the adoption of amendment number 3, the yeas are 27, the nays are 27, and the amendment is lost. All right, now we're going to take up amendment number 4. Amendment number 4, is there objection? There is objection. For what purpose does the senator from the 3rd rise?
Mr. President, I move that we reconsider the vote on amendment number 3.
Senator from the 3rd has moved that we reconsider the vote on amendment number 3. Is there objection? All right, there's objection. Would you like to? He waives the objection. There is no objection. We will go back to the board. All those in favor of reconsidering amendment number 3 will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. All right, just to clarify, we are now re-voting amendment number 3 under reconsideration. All those in favor of amendment number 3 vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. Yeah, so we weren't voting the reconsideration. Oh Lord, if you make this more complicated, Ligon. For what purpose does the senator from the 3rd rise?
Mr. President, isn't it true that this amendment would just make it clear that we're not getting rid of the ability to bring a bad faith claim?
Certainly, each and every member can make that decision. All right, on the adoption of amendment number 3 under reconsideration, the yeas are 26, the nays are 28, and this amendment is lost. All right, we'll take up amendment number 4. Amendment number 4 from the senator from the 6th. Is there objection? There is objection. All those in favor of amendment number 4 will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the adoption of amendment number 4, the yeas are 23, the nays are 31, and the amendment is lost. All right, we'll take up amendment number 5 from the senator from the 19th. Is there objection? There is objection. All those in favor of amendment number 5 will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. All right, on the adoption of amendment number 5, the yeas are 36, the nays are 19, and the amendment is adopted. What a process. Okay, now we're going to take up the measure. Is there objection or agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none, and the report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. The question's on the passage of the bill as amended. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 35, the nays are 19. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed as amended. Ms. Secretary, can you please read the caption to Senate Bill 393?
Senate Bill number 393 by Senator Strickland of the 17th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Part 2 of Article 2 of Chapter 3 of Title 20 and Chapter 3 of Title 35 of the OCGA relating to University System of Georgia and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation respectively, so as to revise the duties and powers of certain law enforcement officers and agencies, to expand the power of campus policemen and other security personnel of the university system to make arrests for felony offenses, to codify the legal division of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, to expand the jurisdiction of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation in regards to street gang terrorism and prevention and for other purposes. Mr. President, on February 26, 2020, the Senate Committee on Public Safety recommends that this bill do pass by substitute, respectively submitted by Senator Albers, Chair. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Public Safety offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 393, a bill titled an act to amend Chapter 3 of Title 35 of the OCGA relating to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, so as to codify the legal division of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, to expand the jurisdiction of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation in regards to street gang terrorism and prevention and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 17th to speak to Senate Bill 393.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I bring you Senate Bill 393. This bill allows local prosecutors to seek the assistance of a new legal division of the GBI to bring down lawyers to assist with the prosecution of crimes. This bill will provide additional resources and expertise for local district attorneys and solicitor generals to help with the prosecution of organized crimes such as gangs and human trafficking. Gang violence and human trafficking doesn't just occur in big cities. This is a crime that's increasingly occurring in suburbs and rural areas in every corner of our state. Many jurisdictions do not have the resources to take down these criminals and prosecute specialized cases. This will provide the help these local jurisdictions need. GBI attorneys under this bill will serve at the direction of local district attorneys and solicitor generals, and they have the authority to prosecute any civil or criminal case within that particular circuit. Senate Bill 393 makes certain that no matter where gang violence, human trafficking, and other organized crime is occurring in Georgia, we have the ability to take these, orchestrating these crimes down, and these criminals will have no safe place to set up shop in our state. With that, Mr. President, I'll be happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 34th for a question.
Thank you. Will the senator yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Senator, for years, I've been watching GBI go from paper to finally getting technology to growing. My question is, I know I sit on appropriations, but did we appropriate enough funding for GBI to take on this responsibility?
I'm not sure exactly what they have in this year's budget, but they already currently have these lawyers working with them. This codifies a process that's already in place and makes certain that all local district attorneys and solicitor generals and also a U.S. attorney and the attorney general himself can use these resources. So this is not actually adding anything new as far as what's currently happening in practice, just codifies what they're doing.
Would the senator further yield?
Yes.
My question is mainly because of the rape kits. They are still behind, and I'm just concerned that now with the murders, they have to go all over the state and all police-involved shootings. I just want to make sure that we are funding them to where they can do all the extras, and I hear you saying that. If the senator would, expound on that.
Yeah, that's a good point. We should make sure they have all the resources, not just deal with rape kits, but also deal with crimes such as human trafficking and gangs, as we talked about. And so I think that is a good point.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 48th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the senator yield?
Yes, ma'am.
On lines 13 and 14, we're talking about where adding the legal division of the GBI. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So currently there is not a legal division of the GBI that is performing these functions.
Not in our code that I'm aware of.
Okay. And my further concern is that these lawyers in the GBI that are yet to be hired or performing in these matters are already, or these duties are already being done by the local authorities, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and special other legal divisions that already exist and are already handling these types of crimes. Isn't that true?
Yes, and the bill says that they have to be requested by the local district attorney, the local solicitor general. So they already have someone handling that, and this wouldn't affect them in any way. They wouldn't have anybody new coming down unless they requested the help.
Does the senator further yield?
Yes.
So for instance, and I will share that as a former federal prosecutor, I did deal with serving with local authorities on special matters. What if the DA of Fulton County requests certain help, but the DA of DeKalb County doesn't want that help, but it is a RICO claim, which often is brought in gangs? How would that work under the auspices of this bill?
Well, the way it works, the local DA can request, so if the DA in Fulton County requested the attorney, they have all the powers that local DA has. And so they could work underneath the Fulton County DA if the Fulton County DA requested them.
But may I further clarify? But I'm saying if the two DA offices are working in conjunction with each other, which often happens with gang prosecutions, and the one DA wants help and the other DA doesn't want help, how is that dispute resolved?
Yeah, so they could only do what the Fulton DA authorized at that point. So the DeKalb DA would have no authority over them.
And one further question, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Who is supervising the legal division when they are helping these other prosecutions? Are they under the Fulton DA, or are they under the GBI legal division, or are they under the Attorney General? Who are they being supervised by?
Well, they'll be under the GBI legal division, but the way the bill is contemplating in lines 67 through 74, they would actually be under the authority of that local prosecutor. So I would say both, the legal division, but also in the case itself, they only have the authority that local prosecutor would have.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 45th for a question.
Will the senator yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Senator, is it not true that what Senate Bill 393 is actually doing is answering the call of local government to assist in increased gang activity? Instead of being here and asking questions, shouldn't we be saying thank you to the governor's office for answering that call? Because in local communities all over the state of Georgia, we've seen an increased incidence of gang activity. Is that not true?
That's very much true. And the way I look at it, if someone doesn't want the help, that's fine. But for our rural counties in particular that may want the help from the GBI, we ought to be encouraging that, I think.
You have no more questions.
Ask for favorable consideration of Senate Bill 393.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 42nd to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to mention a few of the concerns that were flagged for me about this legislation from some of the our local law enforcement partners. First of all, as has already been discussed, district attorneys can already request Georgia Bureau of Investigation help, and every district attorney has the authority to swear in any attorney as a special ADA to handle cases in the jurisdiction. So, as I was sort of already pointed out by testimony, this bill wouldn't change that, and it's also not needed because that authority already exists. Secondly, we need to consider what sort of conflicts of interest and power shifts occur when we allow a team of prosecutors who are not contemplated under the Constitution and are unelected, unlike our district attorneys, to prosecute cases which our system contemplates is the duty of the district attorneys. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation is supposed to be a investigatory agency, or, an arrest agency. They test evidence. They testify in court as to the witnesses, as witnesses for the district attorneys. But it's worth considering what sort of conflict is presented when they also become prosecutors. Adding to that is the problem that they are unelected. And so essentially what we now have is a team of prosecutors that the governor would have control over, which is different, as I already stated, from the system as laid out under our current system and as contemplated by our Constitution, where we have elected district attorneys. The other concern arises, and it isn't in the face of this bill, but what's actually sort of interesting is why do we have this bill when we also have the broader governor's gang legislation bill in HB 994 across in the other chamber? Well, some concerns have been raised that once you combine the two together, what you can have is under RICO, the Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act, if you have a DA that is not inviting the GBI in and wants to handle the case in their own way, the GBI, or this new prosecutorial team, could go to a district attorney that will allow them in, and then under RICO, the venue change could be accomplished over the objection of the local district attorney, and that would be a way around the fact that they would be voluntarily invited in, which is more concerning when you consider the things I said earlier about the broadening of the power and the fact that they're unelectable. If they then can also come in under RICO with 994 over the objection of the local DAs, I think that presents a problem that I just wanted to raise. And also, of course, allows, in that sense, circumvention of local control. That's all I wanted to mention, Mr. President. Happy to answer any questions.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 17th with a question.
Does Senator yield?
Absolutely.
Senator, are assistant district attorneys elected?
No, they are not.
Do you further yield?
Yes.
And so those assistant district attorneys work underneath an elected district attorney, correct?
That's right.
And do you further yield?
Yes.
In the same way, under this bill, someone from the legal division of GBI will work under an elected prosecutor, correct?
Well, unless the scenario that I just laid out came to pass, where they've been able under RICO to go to a county where the elected prosecutor where the crime occurred does not want them, then no, the elected prosecutor for that area would be bypassed.
Do you further yield?
Yes.
Senator, under line 67 on and 68 of the bill, these lawyers only serve at the request of the local prosecutor, correct?
That's what I'm saying. It's been brought to my attention that in concert with 994, that actually might not be the case under 994 when you combine venue changes with RICO activity.
And so their 994 is not passed, correct?
That's correct. And why are they in two separate bills? That was another, sort of curious issue that made, some red flags, I think, go off for some folks, that it's not contained within the same legislation. So the concern would be if they both pass, which I'm assuming is the intention of our esteemed governor's office, and if they both pass, we do need to look at them in concert. And so that's the concerns that have been raised to me and what I was sort of trying to bring before the body.
Yield for one more.
Certainly.
Senator, under Senate Bill 393 we're contemplating today, you said that this will allow the governor to send his or her lawyers that he'll control to local jurisdictions, correct?
I'm sorry, repeat that?
You said that this bill is going to allow the governor to send lawyers that he or she controls to local jurisdictions.
No, well, what I meant by that was the governor appoints the GBI director who then runs the agency. The GBI director is not elected, unlike our local district attorneys that ADAs work under. So there's just, the chain of command runs back to the governor.
And just to be clear, under this bill, the chain of command says the local prosecutor is in charge, correct?
Not exactly. If you combine it with 994 and use RICO, you could go to a different county that was more amenable to allowing them in. Thank you. I yield the well.
Senator has yielded the well. Any other senator wish to speak to Senate Bill 393? The chair sees none. The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to adoption of the committee substitute? Chair hears none, and the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 35, the nays are 19. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Before we move on to our next bill, we want to recognize a former colleague of ours here in the Senate who's now moved over to the justice side of the equation. Justice Charlie Bethel's with us today. Thank you. You must have been a really good state senator. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of Senate Bill 396?
Senate Bill number 396 by Senator Walker of the 20th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Article 3 of Chapter 3 of Title 50 of the OCGA relating to state symbols, so as to designate the pecan as the official state nut, to provide for related matters, repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, on February 25th, 2020, the Senate Committee on Agriculture and Consumer Affairs recommends that this bill do pass. Respectively submitted by Senator Wilkinson, Chair. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 20th to speak to Senate Bill 396.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Senate, you'll be relieved to know that this is not a lawyer's bill. So, hey. However, it's a bill about nuts. And we've got a number of nuts in this body, this esteemed body, and Georgia has some official plants. We have an official flower, official state flower, the Cherokee Rose. We have an official crop, the peanut, and I hope you all have enjoyed your peanut butter sandwich today. If not, maybe you'll get one later. Big industry in Georgia. Peanut is a legume, as you all know, not a nut, but we're proud of our peanut industry, and in fact, I checked with the Peanut Commission before I introduced this to make sure they didn't have any heartburn over this bill, and they said they were fully supportive. We've got an official vegetable, the Vidalia onion, an official fruit, the peach, but we do not have an official nut. Now we got, there were a lot of contenders in this body for that designation. The senator from the 53rd, you could argue that he ought to be the official state nut. The senator from the 51st, the senator from the 28th, but I'm not talking about a nut of the two-leg variety. I'm talking about a tree nut. So this bill would designate the Georgia pecan as the official state nut. According to the American according to the American Pecan Council, the nation's federal marketing order for pecans, the pecan is the only tree nut native to North America, and it's been trademarked as the original super nut. The state of Georgia has consistently ranked #1 for pecan production since the 1950s, up until the recent Hurricane Michael, which devastated our pecan growers in Georgia, and currently we are #2 in the nation for pecan production. We anticipate regaining the #1 title in the near future. The total losses from Hurricane Michael to the pecan industry, or pecan industry, is exceeded $560 million. Georgia lost nearly 30,000 acres of pecan production from Hurricane Michael. So I think it's very timely that we introduce this bill, work with the Georgia Pecan Growers Association to craft this legislation. I do want to recognize and introduce on the Senate floor with us today, Mrs. Samantha McLeod. She's to my right. She's the executive director of the Georgia Pecan Growers Association. She's responsible for providing the pecans that I had on your desk this morning. So please give her a round of applause. But simply what this does is designate the Georgia pecan as the official Georgia nut, and will help us promote a very important industry in Georgia and help our pecan growers in Georgia. I'll be happy to answer a few questions if there are any.
Senator, you have a number of questions, and by the list of names here, some are going to be serious and some are not.
This is
Chair recognizes the senator from the
very
53rd for a question.
Senator Yield?
To my distinguished rules chairman.
Yeah,
yes,
I heard
sir.
that other comment, though, earlier. Did you hear it? Senator, thank you for yielding. I want to know about this special day we have here at the Capitol. Now, I know the peanut is not a nut. It is a
lagoon.
Lagoon, like the Blue Lagoon. And like the gentleman's jackets over here.
Is that your favorite movie, Blue Lagoon?
No, it's not. It's not.
That was a good one.
Senator Yield, I'm asking the questions here.
Yes,
by the
sir.
way.
Sorry.
State your question,
I
Senator.
want to know, is there a conspiracy about today with your bill and having a peanut day, which I know it's Lagoon? Is there some kind of conspiracy? How did you work that out? Was it because your rules chairman is outstanding, or was it just coincidental?
Mr. Rules Chairman, I would not embark on any conspiracy without including you in on it. So.
Good move. Senator Further Yield.
Yes, sir.
Now, a moment ago, you said pecan, and then you said pecan. Can you tell me the official definition and how the word is spelled?
The average price.
Can you do that?
Yes, I can.
Will you do
Yes,
that?
I'd be happy to.
All right.
So right now, the average price of pecans is about $1.70. When they get up to $3, we call them pecans.
I'll get one final question.
Yes, sir.
Is it true for this bill, sometimes you feel like a nut and sometimes you don't?
Absolutely. And with that, I think I'll yield the well.
The senator has wisely yielded the well. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against Senate Bill 396? The chair sees none. Is there objection to agreeing the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary will unlock the machine. He's one of a On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 54, the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. All right, last but not least, for what purpose does the senator from the 25th rise?
Inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Isn't it true, Mr. President, there's always a nut in every room?
The chair certainly sees that to be true. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption to Senate Bill 435?
Senate Bill number 435 by Senator Strickland of the 17th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 10 of Title 17 and Article 2 of Chapter 3 of Title 35 of the OCGA relating to procedure for sentencing and imposition of punishment and the Georgia Crime Information Centers respectively, so as to provide that the court imposing sentence may grant the relief of vacatur for convictions and sentences of defendants who obtain such convictions and sentences as a direct result of being victims of trafficking for labor or sexual servitude and for other purposes. Mr. President, on February 27, 2020, the Senate Committee on Judiciary recommends that this bill do pass by substitute, respectfully submitted by Senator Stone, the 23rd chair. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Judiciary offers the following substitute Senate Bill 435, a bill to be titled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 10 of Title 17 and Article 2 of Chapter 3 of Title 35 of the OCGA relating to procedure for sentencing and imposition of punishment and the Georgia Crime Information Center respectively, so as to provide that the court imposing sentence may grant the relief of vacatur for convictions and sentences of defendants who obtain such convictions and sentences as a direct result of being victims of trafficking for labor or sexual servitude, provide for petitions under seal, to provide for remote electronic testimony, and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 17th to speak to Senate Bill 435.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Senate, I bring to you Senate Bill 435, the Survivors First Act. This bill is another step we can take as a legislature to support those that have been victims of human trafficking. Last year, I brought Senate Bill 158 before this body, which changed the way we treat the young girls and boys that are victims of a trafficker. By decriminalizing prostitution for those 18 and younger, we prevented these individuals from having having to have a criminal record to add to the things they have to overcome when trying to get away from this horrible life. Victims of human trafficking often find themselves victims of our criminal justice system as well. While manipulated by a trafficker, these victims find themselves committing numerous types of crimes at the direction of these perpetrators, and as a result of the psychological state they find themselves in. With Senate Bill 435, we are providing a means for victims of human trafficking to have criminal convictions they obtained as a direct result of being a victim vacated. Moreover, we provide a path for victims of human trafficking to have convictions acquired while being a victim of human trafficking restricted off his or her record. Senate Bill 435 will help victims of human trafficking by making certain that a criminal record doesn't keep these individuals from retaining gainful employment. We know that with employment comes self-reliance and independence, which will make certain that a victim never feels a need to return to a trafficker for survival. This bill is being brought on behalf of First Lady Marty Kemp and the members of the Grace Commission as another important step that this body can take to rid this state of human trafficking and the lingering effects it has on its victims. I also want to take a second to point out or to thank the senator from the 45th for all of her leadership over the years on these issues, and everyone else in this body that's helped over the years to fight this industry in our state. With that, Mr. President, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Senator, you have no questions.
Ask your favorable consideration.
Does any other senator wish to speak? The chair recognizes the senator from the 48th to speak to Senate Bill 435.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to urge your favorable consideration of this important legislation and to thank my colleagues for their work on this bill. Trafficking is an evil we have a particular problem with here in Georgia, and this bill will allow so many of those impacted to move on with their lives without fear. This is an important measure for victims. I'm honored to co-sign on this bill, and I urge your vote yes on Senate Bill 435. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 35th to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, I rise in favor of this bill. We do have a serious problem in the state of Georgia with sex trafficking. It's nothing new. In '97, I passed a bill to make it a felony to pimp or pander children or young people up until age 18. And since then, we've put many teeth in the law by one piece of legislation after another, but we still are considered a hub for sex trafficking. The biggest problem that I see may be resolved somewhat in this particular bill, and that is the fact that many of the young people were the victims of sex trafficking, but they became criminals because they were arrested. And as a result, they do have a record. They cannot get jobs that they need. They have problems renting a decent place, and they sometimes fall back into, unfortunately, illegal problems. So this would help to heal them because they can get out of it. So I thank the senator from the 17th for bringing this legislation, and I will, I do know a lot of information about sex trafficking, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. If not, I yield the floor and I ask for your favorable consideration.
You have no questions. The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to adoption of the committee substitute? The chair hears none, and the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question now being ordered? Chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 55, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. I want to personally thank the senator from the 17th and our First Lady for this legislation. For what purpose does the senator from the 52nd rise?
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the rules be suspended to allow a committee report to be read.
Is there any objection to the committee report being read? Chair hears none. Mr. Secretary, will you please read the committee report?
Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Finance has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 105, due passed by substitute. Respectfully submitted by Senator Huffsteller, the 52nd Chair. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is for a follow-on matter. Have we concluded that last action?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I move that the Senate stand adjourned until 10 a.m. on Tuesday, 3 March 2020.
Ms. Secretary, will you read the announcements?
Rules will meet upon adjournment in 450 CAP. Finance will meet in MES 1 at 2 p.m. Insurance and Labor will meet in 310 CLOB at 2 p.m. Public Safety has been canceled. Education and Youth will meet in 307 CLOB at 3 p.m. Health and Human Services will meet in 450 CAP at 4 p.m. And Judiciary will meet in 307 CLOB at 5 p.m. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the Senator from the 25th for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to remind my Insurance and Labor Committee that I have lunch provided for everyone before our meeting. It's in room 328 right now, CLOB, so feel free to go there, grab you a bite to eat, and then we'll have our committee meeting on too. So I take care of my committee folks.
Any other senators have an announcement? The chair sees none. Our Majority Leader has moved that the Senate stand adjourned until Tuesday, March 3rd, 2020 at 10 a.m. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Those opposed, no. On the motion, the ayes once again clearly have it, and the Senate stands adjourned.